Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Deary, and I am the director of the Charlevoix Public Library. And I'm here to chat with you today about why 2024 is such a big year for the Charlevoix Public Library. And there are two key reasons why it's such a huge year for the library. First and foremost, back in 2004, this community came together to support an expanded vision for their library, an expanded vision for literacy, culture, and education in this community. That's when voters came together to vote for the purchase and renovation of this gorgeous building, the old middle school, into your current public library. So over the last 20 years, voters have supported a 0.75 mils bond through their taxes to pay for that purchase and renovation. And just this past spring, thanks to your 20 years of support, the library made its final payment on that bond. Now, the community owns this library outright. Your library is debt-free. So thank you very much for your 20 years of support. At the same time that the community came together to vote for that bond, to vote for their expanded vision of a library and their expanded vision of education, culture, and recreation, the community also came together to support a 20-year operating millage of 0.65 mils to pay for the larger operating expenses that such a larger building would necessitate. So at the same time that 2024 is a big year due to our wonderful support in paying off that bond, it is also a big year because that 20-year operating millage that was supported in 2004 is expiring as well. Now that operating millage accounts for about 50%, or just short of 50% of the library's operating funds. So it is absolutely crucial to the library's day-to-day operations. And I want to chat with you a bit about those operations, how they've changed, and chat with you a bit about our finances to explain why it is so crucial before I touch on the next 10 years, what our vision is for the future, and why we need your support for that. So first, how has library usage changed in the last 20 years? So 20 years ago, the library still existed on Clinton Street. However, it was just up the road a few blocks in the building that is now the Circle of Arts. That was a 5,000 square foot building compared to our 35,000 square foot building. But much in that building was the same as it is today. In 2004, 60,000 people visited that library. They visited by and large to borrow items, just like today. Folks come to borrow physical books. They still borrow DVDs. They were the hot ticket in 2004. They're still a popular item. Folks visited to socialize and to utilize computers. Back in 2004, it was likely that, or statistics show that it was likely that you didn't have a computer at home and you probably didn't have the internet at home. Less than 50% of Americans had a computer or the internet in their home in 2004. So you might have visited the library to use the computers there. Now, folks still utilize our high-speed Wi-Fi as well as our computers here at the library. So again, some similar usage in 2004 as in 2024. Some of the changes in 2023, our last year that we have full statistics for, we had 90,000 visitors come to the library. So just short of double the amount of visitors that we saw back in the early 2000s coming to our expanded facility. In the 20 years that we've been in this library, we've had as many as 115,000 people visit the library in a given year. What else has changed? Some of the items that you're borrowing have certainly changed. This past year, we circulated 28,000 digital items. That's downloadable ebooks, downloadable audiobooks, maybe streaming movies, maybe downloadable magazines. But that is now about 30% of our circulation, or what we check out to our community, is those digital items. That's a huge change. Those were not available at all in 2004, and we are seeing a continued rise in the use of those materials. What else has changed? 2004, I mentioned computers and the use of the library's technology. About 10,000 people came to the library to use our computers. Now, 54,000 people come to the library to use our technology. The bulk of those folks are connecting to our Wi-Fi. You're using your phone, that computer in your pocket to do it. That's the most use we see of our high-speed Wi-Fi and our technology here at the library. Other changes, programming, 2004, story time, author visits, lectures, those were a big deal at the library. 70 programs were held with 1,100 attendees. they're an even bigger deal at the library now. Last year, we offered over 370 programs, more than one a day, and we had 9,400 attendees at those programs. So those are a major driver of how we meet our mission, that mission to educate the community, to provide enlightenment to the community, culture and recreation to the community. Another big use in this expanded facility here on 220 Clinton Street, we have this great meeting room that I'm standing in now. We have small meeting spaces. We have reservable conference rooms in our second floor. Those are a massive use of the library now. We see folks coming together, whether it's for a program that the library is offering, or whether it's for a training session that their private business is holding here in our community room. Or maybe it's simply to use one of our spaces to get some work done, or to have something like a Zoom meeting or a Microsoft Teams meeting. Last year, we had 725 reservations of our meeting spaces, and we know that we have more than double that amount of non-reserved uses of our individual study rooms and our conference rooms. So that's a major use of the facility. So that's how our services have changed to an extent in the last 20 years, as well as how they've stayed the same. So how about our finances? We're talking about millages, we're talking about support, so let's jump into those finances and what's changed in the last 20 years. So in 2004, local taxes accounted for about 80 to 85% of the library's operating funds. That was $345,000. In 2023, local taxes still account for 80 to 85% of the library's operating funds. However, that amount has changed drastically. Last year, it was about $1,200,000 in local taxes, in total operating funds, with the bulk of those coming from local taxes to support all the services that the library provides. What are the major expenses? The major expenses are our facility. In 2004, again, we were in a 5,000 square foot facility. It cost us about $60,000 to operate that facility. That's everything from cleaning it to repairs to paying for the technology, everything you can think of that goes into running a building. $60,000 in 2004. Last year in 2023, it was about $480,000. So a huge jump there, moving from a 5,000 square foot building to a 35,000 square foot building. The other big change, personnel expenses. Personnel expenses accounted for about 60% of the total operating costs in 2004, and they were $204,000. In 2023, personnel costs are a little lower percentage-wise. They only account for 55% of our operating expenses. And part of that is because the building is a higher percentage. But the total cost in 2023 for personnel was $615,000. That's an employment of 20 people in the community. That is their pay, that's benefits, things like that. So we are an employer of 20 folks in the community, which I think is a community good and service as well. Other expenses, in 2004, the library spent $55,000 on materials, those books, those DVDs, as well as programs, story time, author visits, lectures that I mentioned. 2023, our last full year, $110,000 on materials, as well as our programs. A larger percentage is going to programs now than did in 2004, but we still expend a high percentage on our materials. Again, how we allocate that toward digital materials versus physical materials is different than it was in the past, but it is still around 10% of our operating expenses that go toward the materials that you check out and borrow from the library. The other major expense that has changed at the library over the last 20 years is what we call our capital project expenses. Those are facility expenses as well. However, they are one-time projects that occur at the library. So rather than your cleaning that needs to happen almost every single night, or you're paying for your computers, your technology that needs to happen on an annual basis, capital projects are one-time things, such as, let's say, painting this room or re-wallpapering the room that I'm standing in now. That just happened last year. That was the first time it had occurred in 20 years. Other projects that have occurred recently, we replaced our boilers, and we recently replaced all the rooftop air handling units that make the heat and air conditioning in the building operate. So those sort of one-time capital project expenses, especially in the last few years, have really amounted to a higher cost. Last year, we spent $201,000 on those one-time capital projects. This year, we're budgeting for closer to $350,000. 2004, 20 years ago, we spent about $18,000 on those capital projects. So a major change there in what we're spending. Some of that is simply the age of this building, 20 years old, which doesn't seem all that old, but it's about the time things like air handling units and a roof membrane start to wear out. So we expect those sort of capital project expenses to only continue to climb into the future. So now let's jump again to what the next 10 years might look at the library. We are committed to continuing to be an educational and cultural beacon, offering materials and programs for our ever-changing community. That involves everything from the materials you check out to those programs I've mentioned to anything else we can conceive of in the next 10 years to continue to provide educational, cultural, and recreational opportunities for this community. We want to continue to be what we describe as the community's living room, a space that this whole community can be proud of, that supports diverse community use. In the last 20 years, we've seen the library really grow as a social space, a space where folks come together to do something like play mahjong, or for families to meet and simply have some free social time. That use has continued to go up, and we expect that to continue in the next 10 years. So we will continue to focus on making it as vibrant of a space for that as we possibly can. We also are committed to providing phenomenal customer service delivered by a professional staff. As I said, we have a staff of 20 here at the library. It is a phenomenal staff, and we're committed to keeping that staff performing at the highest level, and that takes an investment in the staff team. So that's what we see over the next 10 years. We also see, again, a rise in the cost of those capital projects. So that's something the board has been weighing as we think about our operating millage that is expiring, that 20-year operating millage of 0.65 mils. The board and I and the staff team as well have really been looking at what the last 20 years cost us and what we project to happen in the next 10 years. And we project, again, rising costs of the facility and general rising costs, just like we see over time with any sort of expense. So how will the library rise to meet these rising costs? We are asking voters to support a 0.8 mils millage on the August ballot. That includes a renewal of the expiring 0.6143 mils. That is the millage that was approved in 2004 for 20 years that will expire in 2025. It was 0.65 mils due to the Headley legislation. It has been rolled back to 0.6143. We are asking voters to renew that amount. We are also asking for a small new additional millage of 0.1857 mils. And that creates that round number, that total round number of 0.8. Why are we asking for that additional 0.1857? It is due to that analysis we did of what we think our building will cost, what we think materials might cost, what we think our facility expenses will cost, and what we think personnel expenses will cost for the next 10 years. We are also committed to not being a perpetually bonding organization. So when we think about larger projects like our roof, we know we need to replace our roof in the next 3 to 5 years. That may cost us as much as $1 million. We do not want to be a perpetually bonding organization that needs to ask for another bond to pay for that. Instead, the board is committed to doing it through the operating millage. And that is the reason we're asking for that small increase in addition to the renewal. So what will this cost you? The great news, I'll say it right off the bat, is thanks to the repayment of that bond, 0.75 mils is coming off your tax roll. So no matter what, if voters approve the 0.8 mils that we're asking for, you will see a distinct savings compared to what you've been paying in the last 20 years for the library. So that requested 0.8 mils, which includes that renewal as well as the 0.1857, will result in lower taxes. And the average property owner in Charlevoix County, this is based on census data, the average property owner in Charlevoix County pays $220,000 or has a taxable value on their property and house of $220,000. That average taxpayer will save $62 per year. So if we jump up a little bit, if the market value of your house is $300,000, your current cost is around $269. It will drop to $185 if this millage is approved. If your property value has a market value of $400,000, your currently paying about $359 per year to the library, it will drop to $246 per year. So even if approved, no matter what, taxpayers see a savings. That's the great news. So that is what we're asking voters for. That's how the library has changed over the last 20 years, and that both service-wise as well as expense-wise. And I hope that that presentation did a good job of explaining the millage request and explaining some of those changes. But I'd also like to say that I am always happy to answer any additional questions you may have. You can reach me right here at the library. My email is rdeery@charlevoixlibrary.org, or stop in and chat with me. Thanks.